Hello, and welcome back to some more Dominion League action. This is not C1. I should probably update that. This is B. I think it's 1. We'll go with that. Hopefully, I'm not wrong. Anyway, this is a match between Kaplane and Bryan. I played Kaplane last season in C Division. And as he was discussing in the Discord earlier, he has a shot of promoting all the way to A, so that's pretty good. And Bryan, I have never played before. So on this board, they both open with amulets. Kaplane gets another amulet. Amulet can certainly be a good opening. Bryan is going to match. So you've got Border Village Torturer to do some drawing and some torturing with amulets in the game. I think that we'll see the players taking the curses from torture reasonably comfortably in order to preserve their hand size, and eventually those will run out, and then the attack will be not an issue, and it'll be a smithy. So Freaky is saying Kaplane wins. I assume that's based on the opening shuffle. Kaplane got his amulet turn 3 and got another amulet turn 4. Bryan did not get his second amulet. So that's what he's reacting to. Probably a little too strong to assume that one trash makes a definitive difference, but I have gotten the impression that Freaky likes to make bold claims. I actually forget what City Gate does. At the start of your turn, plus 1 card, then put a hand from your card onto your deck. Okay, so that's mostly about reliability. Kavo Sapien asks, Border Village Torture. Yeah, so I guess the question is, do you play Amulet for trash, or do you just go ahead and get the Border Village Torture? And Freaky says, get Caravan Guard. Yeah, I don't know how important it is to get the Border Village Torture thing quickly. The one thing to keep in mind. Oh, okay. Kaplane changed his mind and went for it. But yeah, I think that you either need to try to get the that um get that purchase quickly, or you need to add some measure of economy to your deck so that you can buy it before you get too thin. Although I guess amulet gaining silvers can do the trick too. Yeah, as I said, I'm not surprised to see Bryan taking a curse here. He especially because he has 2 amulets in hand, so he can play Necropolis amulet, trash curse, and hovel. And I mean, obviously he could have afforded to discard, but then he wouldn't have gotten to play both of his amulets and do useful things with them. So that seems fine. Certainly he is behind though, as Freaky suggested he would be. I wonder if Windfall comes into play in this game. So there's not a lot of virtual coin on the board. There is Skulk, which is another way to gain payload relatively quickly. Scepter isn't really going to be giving you payload, I don't think. Obviously there's Bank, but if you're going to play Bank, you need treasures. So Yeah, I think actually kaplane could windfall right now. I don't know if he should. Oh, I guess there's no plus buy, is there? That makes windfall a lot less appealing. Okay, yeah, probably not going to see that then. Although it looks like the commentariat would have preferred windfall to skulk. Getting attacks off is nice. Oh, what am I talking about? There's no plus buy. Skulk is plus buy. Hmm. Yeah, I think I agree with kaplane here. Get the skulk first, get the windfall later. Just because you're not going to be able to make use of for 3 golds, particularly until you have plus buy anyway. Although you do run into the issue that by adding this skulk you might not draw your deck again. But with the amulet trashing, that shouldn't be a problem in general. Obviously he could miss his border village on this particular turn. Oh, he will miss his border village. So he was city gate top decking. Yeah, I assume we'll see another border village torture from kaplane here though, and then next turn he should be able to windfall in all likelihood. So, is there anything else happening here? I guess I could see Scepter Skulk. Only needing to have one action for Skulk, and then you play Scepter to get additional buys and additional attacks. Could be alright. But maybe that's just too fancy. So right now there's 4 curses out, 3 of them are in the trash, 1 of them is in Bryan's hand. So yeah, like I said, the torture curses, they do matter because if you're trashing those with amulet, you're not doing other things with amulet, like trashing your other cards or gaining coins or silvers, or just getting rid of the amulets if you don't want either of those things. But even so, I think it's fair to say that they're not. The amulet is doing a good job of dealing with them, unsurprisingly. So yeah, now kaplane does get the windfall. He's definitely ahead. I assume kaplane will take another curse here. Yeah. So he does have an amulet in play, and he's very likely to draw his other one. So he should have no problem getting rid of those curses. I would like to see a skulk from Bryan here, but he could do border village skulk. Yeah, there it is. Definitely still behind, because kaplane has the additional payload in the form of the windfall golds. I do not. Quick Rick says I like Armory over Skulk. I do not. I like plus buy more than I like gaining. I mean, I guess you could always use an Armory to gain a Skulk. But I think that if you're going to get Windfall, you're going to want the plus buy to leverage the golds. Like, if you had 14, 1 buy, and an Armory gain, I mean, you could argue that getting the armory first rather than the skulk means you have one less stop card in your deck, and you can draw that up and then play your armory and then gain the skulk. So maybe that is a better sequence. And it is true that you want the caravan guards, if for no other reason than your opponent's going to be playing torturers every turn, and so you can cycle those through and just get some more payload that way. It's pretty nice. Devor is suggesting Scepter. I do agree that Scepter is a good pickup, and apparently so does Kaplane. Yeah, it's not because of the curses, it's because he can use that to gain additional buys without having to take up more action space. Oh yeah, that is a good point too, that I think Kaplane had hit 14, so now with the Scepter he can also hit 16 and double province. It's definitely nice. So I assume, yeah, Border Village, Torture, Caravan Guard. Seems fine. I assume Bryan would also like a Scepter, and maybe he should have gotten that instead of a Torturer, but then again, he already failed to draw his deck last turn, so he probably does need the extra draw. Even when Torture is just a smithy, it's still quite good. Have either of them trashed their Necropolis? No. Makes sense. I guess I think what happened was Kaplane did trash his Necropolis that one turn that he bought. The first turn that he bought Border Village Torturer, he trashed it and then did an undo. That's why I thought somebody had. So I don't know what the next couple cards in Kaplane's deck are and whether he could afford to play Amulet, gain silver. I'm also not sure whether he'd want to even if he could. It would allow him to get rid of this copper and still hit 16, of course, which would be good. Okay, so he is going to do that. Oh, it's a border village, so he definitely can do that. So that's nice. And he hits 18. Which probably... Oh, right, of course. Scepter for replay doesn't actually give you the money. I haven't played with Scepter very much. I guess it'd be too good if it did. So yeah, double province, hit with another attack. Hitting, now granted, he didn't actually need the extra buy there, so it's a little underwhelming. But, I mean, as it turned out to be good because he trashed Bryan's Skulk, so Bryan lost his plus buy. But using a card to just hex your opponent and do nothing else is generally pretty weak. Although it didn't cost him an action, so you could look at it as like +1 action or something like that. I don't know. So what does Bryan do at this point? He's in a pretty rough spot. He can buy a Skulk and he can buy a Windfall. Okay, he goes for the Windfall. But like How does he turn that into winning? I don't. I mean, he would have been just as behind in a different way if he'd bought a skulk. Maybe that was the time for the armory. I mean, he's probably just sunk any which way, but maybe armory is like kind of a... At least gives him the ability to do something that kaplane can't do. And when you're behind, you gotta try to find a way to do something other than exactly what your opponent is doing, but slower. Yeah, this game is looking pretty over. Although kaplane did miss his skulk, so he didn't double province. I don't think it's going to matter, because Bryan can only single province anyway. Kiva Sapien says that turn shows that Scepter was a mistake. Seems like too strong of a statement to me. Although, yeah, pillage would have been a good option. Not that kaplane really needs it. Oh, okay. I just checked, and this is actually B2 division. So let's just go ahead and fix that. Well, that's a big old dud for kaplane. Maybe Bryan will have a shot. He's not hitting his draw either. Sad times all around. These are definitely not super reliable decks. Despite the city gates. Actually, I guess the only case in which Citygate actually helps is if you have exactly a border village on top of your deck and don't have a border village in hand. If you have a border village in hand, you're going to draw the top card of your deck anyway. And you have to also not have a caravanning card in hand. But yeah, if you have a border village, or a caravan guard in hand, you're going to draw that card regardless of what it is. There's no like top deck interaction synergy stuff going on. So the amount of reliability that Citygate is actually adding is pretty minor. If you were relying on a draw engine where you had well, I guess you could draw your Necropolis and have a Torture in hand. That would be another case. And I was going to say, if you had non-drawing villages, then Citygate would make a bigger difference. So one thing I think people are forgetting is at the time, kaplane. Yeah, I think it's the criticism of the scepter is too harsh from the perspective that it allowed him to get to double province money. Although, I mean, obviously, I said he didn't. Maybe they didn't know he'd be able to get a silver off of an amulet. Obviously, he would. He knew he would have the option to do it in general. He just didn't know that he'd have the option to gain and play the silver that turn. Yeah, basically the question here that we're just discussing is if you have a second skulk, then that means that you're twice as likely to see a skulk, which is good if your deck isn't reliable and you're not generally drawing through it, but bad if it is reliable and you're constrained on action space. Or, you know, to put in between that, potentially bad if your deck is like pretty reliable, but you're making it less reliable by adding more stop cards, whereas Skulk adds 2 and Scepter only adds 1. Meanwhile, Bryan is potentially making a game of it here. If he adds a province and then somehow manages to double province, which seems incredibly unlikely. But that would win him the game. He could also win off a province duchy. No. Yeah, he just needs all the provinces, essentially. I mean, if he had enough duchies, but realistically, he just needs all the provinces. So, kaplane can pretty much lock it down right here with a province pie. Alright, so kaplane closes it out. There's a lot of analysis of things that ultimately didn't affect the outcome of the game, but it is still interesting to think about how to optimize these things. You know, what would have happened if Bryan had had a better distribution of his early amulets and had been keeping closer pace. Would he have been able to punish kaplane for the mistakes that the chat is arguing that kaplane made? Yeah, the Skulk Trash, I think, killed Bryan's ability to come back and potentially punish kaplane for his mistakes. So Bryan or Freaky says sad 5-2. What? I can't actually see what kaplane's split is, but I guess it is 5-2. You can see that here. I like never played with Sinister Plot. At the start of your turn, add a token here, or remove your tokens for one card each. Okay, I actually have played with it like once. So I guess the question is Temple or Exorcist, and then so Bryan picks up a Candlestick Maker over Pawn or Silver. There's not okay, yeah. There's the only draw on this board is Imp from Exorcist, which is going to be a little annoying to set up because it generally just is. Like, you have to put higher value cards into your deck and then trash them instead of the starting cards that you'd rather be trashing. And as has also been mentioned, there are no villages other than Ghost. So not a particularly strong board overall. I guess you can get some draw out of Sinister Plot. Obviously not consistent draw. You could look at it as, draw a card every other turn. That's not what you're actually going to do with it, but on average, probably it would end up being something more like a weak. Well, if you draw, you can draw one card every other turn. You can draw 2 cards every third turn. So I guess you do draw more cards on average the longer you wait. Is that correct? Because you gain tokens more often. But of course, the fewer times you do draw, the fewer turns you get to improve. So I don't know if it's really worth investing in. Yeah, so Freaky says you have to build mostly because of militia. And yeah, that it's definitely very difficult to reliably hit province money when you have a 3-card hand, although the fact that the board is weak means that in practice you shouldn't be getting hit by militia every turn. There is trashing to make that more likely, but even so, I guess if you have enough secret passages, maybe you can always find your militia even if you're not increasing your hand size. You just sift through your old deck. And I could be wrong about the imps. Maybe they will end up going in for that and actually be able to increase their hand size. I mean, there are several reasonable targets. You can imp pawns, secret passages, candlestick makers. Well, not plural, but those are all non-terminal, which gives you some space to play around. But it is a lot of work to set up to get all the expensive cards and then trash them down. Be interested to see what they do with the Sinister Plot. Like I said, I've played with it maybe once. I really have no idea how to play it optimally in the general case. Oh, I also haven't mentioned Triumphal Arch, so you can certainly get 3 pawns and 3 secret passages. You can probably do 3 candlestick makers, 3 will-o-wisps. Oh, this is the second most, not the. No, I was thinking of Orchard. Okay, never mind. So you just get, I guess, a lot of some subset of secret passage, pawn, will-o-wisp, probably. So Bryan picks up a second militia. I'm not entirely sure why. I think I would rather just have a secret passage. Unless. No. Yeah, I think I would rather just have a secret passage and just go find the militia that I already have. Yeah, there's also gardens on the board. I could. There's enough trashing that you don't necessarily need to go for gardens, but it might be. It might still be good. Gardens are cheap. And you're not going to have big hands to work with, so being able to buy cheaper cards could be helpful. Trying to figure out what Donald's X said. It's people like you that stop me from saying Kingdom card in text. I can't figure it out. That's fine. So Kaplane used his sinister plot, and the results are not super impressive. He did get off a temple trash, which is good, of course. And he wouldn't have been able to do that without firing it off, but I do wonder whether he would have been better off just playing the militia that turn and then templing next turn. He should have had a pretty good idea that... Oh wait, Kaplane has 2 militia. I apologize. I thought Bryan had... I thought they each had 1, but if I read that correct, or I saw that correctly, it looked like Kaplane had a militia in his discard, and or no, maybe he just redrew the... I don't know. I'll figure it out at some point. But anyway, I would have... If Kaplane knew he had his temple coming up, then firing the sinister plot in order to draw into a second terminal just didn't seem great. Huh. That seems like kind of an odd plot as well. Although it looks like he might actually draw through, but... No, never mind. He hasn't top decked with the passage. Whereas drawing through when you play a whole bunch of pawns as just cantrips isn't especially interesting. Huh. What? Is he planning on trashing the pawn to gain a Will-O-Wisp? I guess so. That's interesting. It is... Will-O-Wisps are good cards to have. But I would still want to get rid of the coppers. So are both temples in the trash at this point? Yeah. Somehow there's only 1 point on the temple. I guess it was... The second one was gained pretty late. Not sold on Imp, better than Wisp, says Freaky. Well, certainly right now the Wisps are pretty good because you still got lots of coppers in your deck that they can draw, as well as the pawns and the candlestick makers. And the pawns and the candlestick maker thing is not going away. You're going to have them for most of the game. I think having a handful of imps and a whole mess of Will-O-Wisps is probably the ideal setup. Oh, and of course the Will-O-Wisps can also draw the imps. You can also use Secret Passage to set up your Will-O-Wisps, which is nice. Looks like he's exercising another pawn. So many wisps. What is happening? Did he mean to play the copper and oh, he wanted to use coffers for his buy. Okay. Definitely not a quick moving game, and I don't mean the speed with which they're playing, just like the presence of militia, the lack of draw, the lack of terminal space, that they don't have a ton of economy going. The pawns have piled, so we are moving along, but not quickly. Just a very, very limited scope in terms of what you can do in this board. It's hard to believe that a deck that consists almost entirely of cards costing 2 or less could be viable. Although I suppose between the Triumphal Arch points and the Temple points, you could potentially end the game without ever dipping into green cards. How many pawns are in the trash at this point? 3. Yeah, I would actually think that if you really wanted to load up on the wisps, what you'd want to do is trash the candlestick makers. Not all of them, but more so, because you don't want to have a deck full of candlestick makers, but a deck full of pawns isn't hurting you. Huh. Wonder why he didn't play a secret passage. And then play pawn for coin action or something. Or, well, I guess he would have had to play something to draw the passage card, but yeah, maybe there was no reason to play the passage. Never mind. Yeah, I have to assume his plan is to trash at least one candlestick maker here. X Truffles asks, when do you stop building? I think the answer might be never. Candlestick makers are probably going to run. Okay, it looks like he's planning to trash two, unless he's going to trash the secret passage to get an imp, which I think would be reasonable. He can definitely support a second imp. Interesting. Get a temple. It is worth 1 VP. Maybe he just plans to trash it for another imp. I think I'd rather, yeah, hold on to the secret passage and then plan to trash the temple for an imp. So Bryan has 15 Triumphal Arch points, which means he's got 5 pawns, I think. 5 pawns. No, wait, he can't. Well, he could have 5 pawns. There's 3 in the trash, which would mean that kaplane has only 2. Donald X says after the CSM's empty, he will go for gardens. I mean, that might be true, but I'm not sure. If he built up coin tokens for a while, which he won't do too much unless he keeps some of those candlestick makers around, but he could just go for like an estate pile out. The advantage of estates is that you can draw them with the wisps. Can't do that with gardens. Oh, you don't want that. Okay, so I assume here play 1 candlestick maker, exercise, candlestick maker, and temple. So he does have, he does have 5 pawns and 6 wisps. Kaplane's got 9 arch points. I assume, how many, I don't know how many wisps the game starts with actually. But I assume that's off of wisp and candlestick maker? So he doesn't have 3 pawns. He has 2. So he could have 4 wisps and 3 candlestick makers. Yeah, Cavo Sapien says you could support more non-tiny cards of Secret Passage. Yeah, I mean that's true. You can set your wisps up. Although it's still going to be less reliable because you have to draw things in the right order. I guess the problem with what Bryan did this past turn is he did gain better cards, but he didn't improve his point position. He has a lead, but kaplane should be closing in on him this turn. Although kaplane has worse targets for Triumphal Arch, I think kaplane is perhaps the one who wants to go in for the secret passages because he has fewer wisps, I think, and candlestick makers aren't as good of a card to have loads up in your deck anyway, so you don't really want that to be the limiting factor on your Triumphal Arch points, especially because there's only one of them left anyway. Of course, the problem with going in for secret passages is that you're lowering a third pile, but the game is potentially ending, and Bryan can just buy points directly at that point. I guess it's not impossible that kaplane could get enough imps to have that factor into his arch points. Yeah, Seprix says turn 16, no provinces. If you're just playing a straight money strategy, you'd expect to have some provinces by now. In fairness, if you had 2 provinces, you'd be losing, assuming you'd trashed your estates, and you would be getting hit by militia pretty reliably, so your hands would potentially be pretty bad. So I mean, I think the implication is supposed to be like, oh, their strategies are not good, but I think that's not entirely fair. So does he exercise an exorcist here? I assume Bryan does not want to blow all of his coffers on a province. Maybe he does. Oh, no, okay, he's going to get a gold. That makes sense. Changeling, interesting. What are you gaining off of Changeling? There's no pawns or candlestick makers to gain. You don't want another militia. Maybe Secret Passage? Yeah, I do think that might have been one imp too many. I think I would have actually taken another wisp there. It was the last wisp in the pile. It doesn't increase his arch points, but it's still a better card for his deck. And it's not like you're not allowed to take wisp just because you trashed a more expensive card. Lots of undos in this game. Okay, so yeah, Kaplane wanted to hold on to that candlestick maker so he can grab the last wisp. So he's going to have 5. So I guess are there 12 in the starting pile? Does Bryan have 7? And it looks like Kaplane is planning to pick up another imp himself, which probably makes a little bit more sense in his case because I think he has fewer of them to begin with. I think there's 13 imps in the starting pile because it's, unlucky. If Will-O-Wisps were a supply pile, this game would be over. Oh, Kaplane did get an additional 3 points there, which is probably from gaining the imp. So, all the more reason for him to pick one up. Bryan does indeed have 7 wisps. And Bryan does appear to have an extra imp from a... Like, he didn't end up playing it, so... So here, I assume Changeling becomes Secret Passage. That seems like the only reasonable thing to do to me. He can't possibly think it's a good idea to exercise it into another imp. Oh, right, you could Changeling for a gold, of course. Forget that you can do that for non-actions. Yeah, that makes more sense. Alright, so he'll just exercise the copper, presumably. Unfortunately, I haven't been paying attention to the thing I said I was going to be interested in, which is how they were using the Sinister plot. It seems like they've been drawing every third or fourth turn, so when they have 2 or 3 tokens, but I haven't really noticed a particular rhyme or reason to it. Well, I think it's probably been obvious. I definitely think Bryan is ahead, not just in the points, obviously, but in the construction of his deck. He does have the multiple buys thanks to the Candlestick Maker. So as ridiculous as this would have seemed a few turns ago, he might actually attempt to build towards double province rather than just single provincing. I'm not sure that he should. He could maybe... How close is he to setting up an estate pile out? 4 buys. I mean, he can do a bunch of action buys. Potentially with the pawns to get up to the 8 buys. They think he already had the estate pile out. Is that true? Well, I don't know how he played all of those actions, but he needed... So he needs 16 coins to pile estates. Right now he's got 16, so that's 4 pawns he could have played for buys. Yeah, he had it. Soccer is Fun says that's never ever granted. Not true. I would have granted it. You didn't learn any new information, it's fine. I'm not gonna, like, force you to count correctly immediately, you know? Like, I want that undo, and I'll give you that undo. I hope he does request the undo. I want the game. Okay, well, it's too bad. Gains a bunch of changelings. What? That... Yeah, I guess changelings could pile, but you don't want them in your deck. They're making it less likely that you can pile. I find that really bad. Hey, that does serious damage to your ability to move through your deck. Yeah, you can't. Yeah, you can't turn changelings into changelings because they're not a card in play. Oh, I see. Okay, yeah, they're saying you play something costing 3 or more, and then you play changeling, trash it, gain the thing, and then exchange it for a changeling. Okay, so yeah, you can do that, but you have to get all those changelings into your hand, which your wisps don't draw, and your imps don't play. Ugh. You can't choose an empty pile. Well, that shouldn't matter. Just choose gold or something. But I still don't like the approach at all. Given that he missed the pile out, I would have preferred second province, and I would have also preferred him just taking gold. I forget, like gold silver or something that was intended to set him up for a double province. I do think he should have been looking for the estate pileout, specifically because they're. I mean, you should always be looking for it in some sense, but specifically because you actually could, with a lead, afford to put some estates into your deck, like more safely than you can put changelings into your deck because of the wisps. Like in essence, he just bought 3 changelings, so he lowered the changeling pile to 5. If he'd bought 3 estates, that would have been arguably just straight better. Okay, he gets to Imp's Secret Passage. That was looking like a pretty bad turn, but now looks okay, doing Secret Passage shenanigans with the wisps. That Imp can't play anything though yet. Let's see if he can draw something. Candlestick Maker. So you can play that. How far can he get? Wait, what? Did I miss something? Why didn't he play Imp Candlestick Maker? Okay. Everyone else is losing it about that as well. Well, Bryan has definitely not played the end of this game as well as he could have. Yeah, turning changelings into imps, I really don't understand that. If you're going for the pileout with the changelings, you can't do that. And he clearly didn't need another imp. I don't know. He can't have bought all those changelings with the intention to turn them into imps. That would be like clear overkill. So I don't know if that was a more of an opportunistic move, saying, "Well, I've got this changeling in hand anyway." But I mean, he would if if that was actually the plan, he would have been better off just not buying the changelings and buying nothing if it came to that. So kaplane can double province here and pulls into a tie, and potentially has a better deck just by virtue of not having added the junk that Bryan has added. Bryan definitely had the better deck before, but I don't know that he does now. In fact, I think it's like, well, I don't know. He still does have more wisps and more pawns, but puts a copper on the bottom. Oh, he didn't have any wisps left. Alright, well, put a province on the bottom. That seems clear. guess he's not trying to draw through. Does he have a pile out? Oh, he does have 2 changelings, so he can buy province. Well, it doesn't have to be province, actually. He can buy estate. Estate and 3 changelings is 11. Soccer is fun, as pointed out. And then you turn 2 changelings into changelings per the earlier discussion. But now he does decide to try to draw through. Well, he knows that those last 3 cards are Exorcist, Copper, Province. There's no real reason to try to draw any of that unless you think you're playing another turn. Asking about the changeling for changeling thing. He's gonna figure it out. Alright, well, in the end, we get there. I would not have guessed changelings were going to be the 3rd pile. But, well, you never know. Yeah, that was a long one, and could have been a little shorter. But Bryan was ultimately not punished for stumbling a bit towards the end. And he did do a better job of building his deck up in the early game, so I don't necessarily think, you know, there is a tendency for people to look at the end of the game and just remember that and be like, oh man, Bryan, you know, he messed up. He should have lost the game. But the fact that he built the better deck early on should not be ignored, and I think it's fine for him to be rewarded for that. All right, so here we have Goat. Always nice when you have Goat. And what else? Apothecary may not be worth taking the time to invest in with the Goat. Ironmonger, always a good card. Port and Journeyman, so there's draw. There's not plus buy. There's sort of kind of gaining with Rogue. Bryan advances his Necropolis into a Rogue, and that's fun. What happens? Okay, so early on, there's a good chance that Rogue is just Terminal Silver. There is Forge, so that's... It's not a way to gain exactly, but you know, you can transform some things into other things. I don't really know how relevant that's going to be. The Goat trashing should make it not worth investing in as just a way to clear cards. So the question is, like, what else do you do with Forge? You can, I guess what you can do is you can forge something and then pick it back up with Rogue. So that is a very convoluted form of gaining. I will share my incredible insight with, with the chat here about this amazing potential. All right, so they are indeed both ignoring Apothecary, which I think is correct. Cracking open the ports, also a good idea. You're going to want some of those. With Ironmonger, it's not necessarily critical to get your fair share of the ports. 4 point ports is probably fine. You got goat trashing, so you're going to have plenty of action density to activate your Ironmongers as villages, if that's what you need. There's also lackeys to add villagers. And there's also rogue things, depending on what ends up in the trash. You can certainly end up stealing your opponent's ports or Ironmongers or journeymen or rogues or whatever. Alright, so Kaplane does go in for an early forge. I don't know if he's looking at that more as an opportunity to rapidly thin the rest of his coppers, or if he wants to do silly shenanigans along the lines of what I suggested. I mean, the shenanigans I suggested are probably overkill, but I hope that it works. I want to see something exciting happen here, and I think that's the most exciting thing I can see happening. I mean, you can get pixies and get some plus buy off of pixie, but you're not going to get it with any reliability, of course. That's certainly a lot of ports. Oh, and I guess I something I didn't mention. I mean, obviously, the Journeyman is a great draw card, but you know, Lackeys is fine when your deck is flooded with ports and Ironmongers. Yeah, and Sammy also makes a good point that I should have mentioned about Forage, which is that you can forge province into province, and that gives you some pile control. So that's, you know, I mean, a turn 5 forge isn't necessary if that's what you're aiming for, um, but it could certainly play into the end game. You could also forge a 5 cost into a duchy, or 3 and a 2 if you have a watchtower, I guess. Only one watchtower has been purchased. I mean, you know, you can use watchtower um, to top deck stuff. So you know, if you're gaining good stuff, you want to set up for your next turn. The problem with that is without plus buy, yeah, you're just gonna be buying green cards at some point, so it's less valuable than it would be otherwise. Oh, that watchtower is going to stay in the game because of Rogue. I had forgotten about that. Yeah, nothing that's cost 3 or more and is purchased is going to really stay out of the game for long because of the Rogues. Well, 3 to 6, I should say. You forge a forge, it's gone. I don't know why you'd be doing that, but interesting. Forges a rogue into a rogue, and now you can draw it back up. That's pretty cool. Good way to get a second rogue without having to spend a buy on it. Yeah, I mean, I think you see those silvers. What silvers? Um, but yeah, I think that right there is an illustration of why Forge could be relevant even in ways that I wasn't accounting for. I mean, I kind of said it earlier, you know, Forge something and then pick it back up with Rogue, but um, the fact that you can do that with Rogue itself means, in theory, there can be like a bunch of gain and play stuff going on because you're like constantly cycling multiple cards in the trash and then picking them back up. Again, this might all be too fancy ultimately, but there is at least enough draw and village support to give you the terminal space and the draw to do it. So at the very least, it looks like they're going for it, and I said I wanted to see something exciting, and I'm getting my wish, so I'm happy about that. Trash the goat? Oh no! You can't trash the goat! That's so mean. What did the goat ever do to you except help you out? Come on, Bryan. I won't stand for this sort of behavior. Yeah, the goat costs 2. So, I mean, you do get to gain a lackeys, but still, it's pretty offensive. Ooh. Tough choice for Bryan. He doesn't have another rogue, but maybe he has enough draw that he doesn't actually need the journeyman. Yeah, I mean, I agree with his choice. You need to hang on to that rogue, otherwise your ability to... I mean, I guess he could forge a different 5 into a rogue and play the rogue. Maybe that would have even made more sense, but it depends on how much draw he has. And right now, it certainly looks like he has plenty of draw. And he's got the watchtower too, so you can top deck with the rogue gains. That's pretty nice. Yeah, I gotta say, Aku, you were wrong about this board being sad. It's definitely interesting. I'm not 100% confident that you couldn't just win by ignoring all of this and going for a more straightforward money deck, but there's definitely fun to be had on this board. So what's in the trash right now? Nothing. Okay. So then the question becomes, do you play... Well, kaplane's got 2 rogues, so you can do one of each, but do you put something into the trash with Forge first, or do you go for your opponent's cards first? Obviously, going for your opponent's cards is more speculative. You're not guaranteed to hit anything. But if you do hit something, hey, you can steal something, and that's nice. If I were kaplane, I would... I guess this is what Kavo Sapien and X Truffles were suggesting last turn. If I were kaplane, I'd like to have a watchtower so I could do the top decking shenanigans that Bryan's doing. Third rogue. Wow. That's a lot of rogues. Wait. Did I miss something here? He forged, trashed a rogue, gained it. Oh, he gained a journeyman. Okay, so not third rogue. Gotcha. Oh, Kaplan bought a province. I just completely missed that. I was looking at, why does he have one debt? Oh, because he took the debt off the province pile. Okay. Well, somebody was going to have to do it eventually. Like I said, I still would have liked Kaplan to have a watchtower, although it's awkward. I mean, if he wants to buy province, you know, like, well, you can't gain a watchtower and a province. The problem with gaining a watchtower is you need some way to add up to that cost, or you need to hit Bryan's watchtower. But since he didn't hit Bryan's, he didn't have any other way to gain it without just buying it, and I'm sure he didn't want to spend his buy on it. It's too bad you can't pull pixies out of the pile with Rogue. Then this game would really be fun. Fourth Rogue. That is not something you see most of the time with Rogue in the Kingdom, but perfectly reasonable here. So one thing about this... Yeah, so just to repeat what I'm saying here, like the rogue interaction is weird. The fact that it only attacks if there's nothing else to gain out of the trash means that if you aren't mirroring, if you're playing a very different strategy, then their rogue attack against you is not necessarily relevant to what they're trying to accomplish with the rogue, which means they don't necessarily want to actually hit you with the rogue attack, which means they might just do the forge first thing, at which point you're not necessarily affected by the rogue attack. Like if you're playing a money strategy and you're putting silvers into your deck, this opponent, your opponent might not be interested in picking up those silvers. Alright, so right now is there anything in the trash? Oh, there is a gold. Because Kaplan literally just trashed it. He wasn't able to pick it back up, though. Unfortunate. how could he have ordered that differently so that that wouldn't have happened? Did he just not have the draw, or did he need to play Journeyman later? I think that's what it is. Although, well, he named Copper, and he did have a Copper. Like, if he had named Province, he might have whiffed by drawing the Copper instead. Oh, wait. No, he already had that Copper in hand, so he was just wrong about about needing to name Copper, I guess. So now the chat is criticizing the duchy buy. I'm inclined to agree. I don't think that Bryan is in a position um, to end the game on a win here. I don't think there's a need to duchy dance just yet. I'm not exactly sure what Kaplane's reasoning for picking up the duchy was, but obviously he was a little short on draw, and on this last turn, you need the overdraw to be able to do all of the gain and play stuff. So probably another journeyman would have been preferable. He would have had to take a debt for it, which is a factor. It may have played into his preferences. Although, wait, did he have to take a debt for the duchy? I guess he did. Yeah. Oh, so he could have paid off the debt anyway. So that's not actually a factor. All right, so Bryan is able to double province thanks to forging ports, and was able to grab all the ports back up because he's got 4 rogues. So that's pretty good. And meanwhile, this is a really bad turn for Kaplane. I don't know what you do here as Kaplane, actually. I mean, you could buy a watchtower, buy a lackeys. Okay, he gains the watchtower. I do like the watchtower. In addition to the top decking, you have a reasonable shot of being able to use it as a draw to X card. It's already come up a couple of times in the game. I haven't called it out. Chat is saying that he should have forged province to province to leave 3 provinces in the pile. Yeah, that makes sense under certain assumptions. If you leave 3 provinces, Bryan double provinces, he's province duchy ahead. I don't know. I'm actually not. I'm not sold on that. I think that if you're Kaplane, you want to have the ability to double province if Bryan, or the option to double province if Bryan double provinces. All right, so Bryan once again forged ports into provinces. As the chat is mentioning, he ran out of actions, so he only gained 1 province, picked up an estate, which I'm not sure what I think about that. Doesn't seem likely to make a difference, and he did just shuffle, but maybe I'm wrong. It's kind of like the end of football games and calculating when you go for 2 or not. Trying to figure out what sequence of back and forth point exchanges would result in that being worth the risk. Right? Like, kaplane would have to pick up a duchy again in a situation where they ended up otherwise tied on in terms of province gains. How likely is that? Is it likely enough that you want to add an estate into your deck in order to like be ahead in that scenario? I don't know. I'm not a fan of it, I think. States are just not very good. Meanwhile, kaplane has enough villagers that he can play this out. If he... Can he get enough cards out of his hand to be able to draw with Watchtower? Obviously he can play the 2 rogues, and then he can forge something. So let's assume he forges 1 card and a copper. So he'll have, let's say it's a province, just for simplicity's sake. So he'll have 1, 2, 3, 4 cards left. He plays Watchtower, he has 3 cards left, so he'll draw, yeah, he'll draw up, and he can draw 1 card gained off of Rogue. So he could, that card will be Port. So he could play Duchy, Copper to Duchy, and Rogue it back. I kind of like that. Oh, trashes Duchy, Watchtower, and gains the province. Interesting. That's... Yeah, I think I liked him being able to play the Watchtower. I don't... I'm not exactly sure what he drew off of it. So it's possible that he would have just drawn more irrelevant cards, and that it wouldn't have helped him get a province. Alright, so there's no duchies in the trash, right? Right. So... how does Bryan pick up province duchy here? And incidentally, the estate will make the difference if he can do it. So props to him for that. Okay, you can forge Rogue. Okay, yeah, Rogue into Duchy or Rogue Watchtower into Province. You play Rogue, gain Port, I think. No, gains another Rogue. I'm not sure I follow that. I mean, well, it's like it is economy. I guess it depends on what his next 3 cards are. If he doesn't have any draw in there, it kind of doesn't matter. Okay, he's got a couple ports. That's not draw, but it is gonna let him play his rogues. But he's short of province money. So this should be most likely kaplane's win. I also, Kavo Sibian's asking if there was a win there. I also wonder that, but I tend to think not. Alright, so a win for kaplane. How many turns was that? 14. So yeah, I mean that definitely outpaced straight money, I think. I definitely got my wish. I mean there was a lot going on in that game, and the rogue forge thing was real. Also, just rogues in general, but um, the rogue forge thing did help get it started. I guess you didn't really necessarily need. Well, no, you did. You needed to be able to throw cards into the trash so that you could gain other cards and then pick the the cards you threw into the trash back up. So yeah, I called it. All the credit goes to me and also to the players who actually did it and did it well, probably better than I would have. Somehow Kaplane managed to end the game with only 2 ports. Bryan had 7. It's impressive. Surprising. Alright, so now we've got donate, which means we don't have to worry about ill-gotten gains, so that's nice. There's not... Well, there's kind of draw on this board. There's Wandering Minstrel Lackeys. I guess that's draw. There's also Festival for some additional reliability on playing the lackeys. Obviously, Festival Lackeys doesn't increase your hand size, but it does at least mean you're more likely to line your lackeys up with something that where it's non-terminal, especially because they give you the villagers as well. Oh, what are the druid boons? Buy silver and gain gold. Alright, so you can get all the treasure with druid if you really want to. The Oh, hey, with donate, yeah, they're going for the that makes a lot of sense. That's really strong. You just you gain a silver, you discard and gain a gold, and then you got some purchase power, and you've got druid to give you 2 buys and a coin. Not you're gonna need 2 buys, but still, it's pretty nice. So I assume the general play is to... Which one is Sky? Right, so... Yeah, it looks like Bryan at least is going to go directly for the gold, which does make sense. I mean, I'm saying that you do have to keep more coppers to that way, which I'm not trying to suggest means that you should go that direction. I'm basically just not. I'm not sure which ends up being faster in the long run. The math is probably not actually that hard on that. I mean, you spend a turn getting a gold. Then the next turn you have 6. You can pay off the debt, and maybe you gain a silver that turn. I don't know. Well, I suppose it doesn't matter. It looks like they've already decided which way to go. So then the question is, okay, so you're going to get the gold. What do you do the next turn? Do you pay off your debt, or do you take another gold? I mean, you can pay off a little bit of debt, obviously, even if you do take another gold. You can still discard 3 copies. You have gold, play gold. Or you can pay off all the debt immediately, potentially even buy a lackeys with the 2 remaining coins you have if you go druid for coin, or you can gain a silver. And then what 5 cost are you gaining? Okay, so yeah, Bryan does go for the lackeys. There's been discussion of villain. That could make sense. So the nice thing about villain is that you're gonna hit like the gold or the druid. You're not gonna hit the coppers. I would also consider festival just for increasing your payload. You might be wanting to donate again to get rid of the remaining coppers, or maybe you do that with a forge or even a mine. I'm not really sure what the optimal approach is, but in any case, festival doesn't increase your money any more than villain does. It does give you extra buys. You don't necessarily need the extra buys because of druid. It also gives you extra actions, which you can then use to play lackeys for draw. So yeah, so kaplane picked up a second gold immediately rather than just paying off all the debt, whereas Bryan paid off all the debt and got a lackeys. And Bryan picked up another gold, gained a lackeys. Now kaplane gains a couple of lackeys, so we're pretty well. Actually, he gained 3 lackeys, so we're not quite mirrored, but we're pretty close. But I would think at this point you'd want. All right, so minstrel lackeys. I guess the lackey split is pretty important. Like no joke, because that's your only source of draw. So I guess it does make sense to just pile out the lackeys and not worry too much about getting the village support, since you've got the villagers anyway. So you can just play. You can just burn through the villagers and worry about the villages later. Right now the split is 3-3. Kaplane can play. I mean, I don't. I assume he's just going to play druid for buy, and then he's got 9, which can buy him 3. Actually, he can buy him all 4 of the lackeys if he wants. I don't think that would be unreasonable, honestly. Or does it give him 10? Well, whatever. It gives him enough. Oh, but he only has 3 buys. Right. Okay. So, yeah, but he still wins the split 6-4. Bryan has a Wandering Minstrel, which isn't going to be relevant soon enough probably to help him overcome that difference. Although I guess Sammy disagrees. So I do think that villain could play a role here, because the fact that all the draws coming off of lackeys means if you can hit somebody with villain every turn, well, there is gold, and they can discard a gold, and that's that doesn't have a lot of impact. But if you can discard the villages, then you can make them eventually run out of villagers. Is they Oh no, wait, they can discard lackeys. Never mind. It's 2 or more, not more than 2. Yeah, okay, never mind. Never mind. Villain, not that relevant. So forget that I said that. I mean, it's still an attack. Maybe you want to get it for that reason, but probably not, just because your draw is so limited. Forge Minstrel. Okay, so I guess the forge may be intended as a copper cleanup mechanism. I have to think it's also intended as a way to get more points. Although, I mean, there's plenty of buys, and you can get some virtual coin from the festivals. You can get golds off the druid. Although you don't necessarily want to be discarding 3 cards, but oh, Bryan already opens up with a province and also gets its own forge. Interesting. I'm not seeing the forge being super impactful other than cleaning up the coppers, but there might be something that I'm missing. I mean, maybe he just wants to forge some stuff into... Well, there's nothing he can really forge into Minstrel other than the lackeys, which he doesn't want to get rid of. I mean, I guess I tend to think at this point, play Druid for gain gold, just like toss 2 lackeys. And, well, you do want to forge those coppers, I guess? Or maybe you just don't bother. I think the plan with I would lean towards just don't play it this turn. For the forge, play druid, discard forge lackeys, um, gain another gold by. Okay, no. Oh, that is a good question. Why did he keep that copper? He needed one of the coppers to get to 8, but he didn't need both of them. Alright, so what is Bryan doing here? Forge province and coppers by province. Why is that too slow? Oh, he just means because he said it after Sammy. But yeah, I think that's perfectly good. And he's got 3 golds in a festival, so he's got plenty of economy without the coppers, whereas kaplane has no festival, and oh, he does have 3 golds. He just didn't see them all last turn. Interesting. Gain a silver. I guess that makes sense. His deck isn't going to reliably draw anyway, so don't pretend that it will. Just put some silver in and have some extra money density. Yeah, this is definitely looking awkward for kaplane. I mean, I like that he got out ahead on the lackeys, but either that was a bad idea or he has not transitioned correctly out of that phase of the game into having more actions. Down to one villager. Rough situation for sure, and he needs one of those coppers to be able... Well, I guess he can just not play the druid, but then he's stuck with no ability to... Well, I think he needs to hang on to the villager that he's got. So the question is, can he afford to... Well, I mean, I guess he could risk playing the druid in order to pick up some minstrels or festivals or something. I don't know. I mean, it's not like he's ever going to get any more villagers. So saving one villager, if you have a renewable supply of villagers, then unlike the coal that it's been characterized as in the chat, then always hanging on to one villager is a good idea because you can make sure that you have the opportunity to kick off a turn and then get to whatever it is that resupplies your villagers. But since he doesn't have a renewable supply, it probably doesn't matter, and it's probably fine to go ahead and just spend it. But he spent it to gain a gold, which does mean that he can forge away the coppers without nearly so much risk to his economy. But it also means that he's either not buying province or not gaining any villages, which are both awkward options. I'm just wondering whether it would have been possible to use the forge to get some more villages, or at least a village. Okay, so he just skips the province. If he can build to double province, that's if he has one turn of not buying province, but then can double province, then that's at least neutral. So that's potentially okay. Though, from a timing perspective, things are off for him because if Bryan gets a province here and then kaplane double provinces, there's one province left, Bryan grabs it and wins the game. So that may not actually... Oh, Bryan being able to double... That's probably GG. Yeah. That's I mean, mathematically it's not over, but kaplane doesn't really have a reasonable path to victory at this point. So, well played to Bryan. Sam E vindicated for his opinion that he was fine with being the guy with only 4 lackeys. And this is a demonstration of the fact that there is such a thing as being like overly concerned with like draw and reliability. If it's like too slow to get there, like you may be better off building a deck that is like reasonably good but not amazing at drawing itself than building a deck that can definitely draw itself, but it takes quite a bit longer to get there, which in essence is the difference between having the 6 lackeys and the 4 lackeys, because you need more villages to support the additional lackeys. And it also means you weren't buying those components as early because you were spending those buys on lackeys. I thought that there was going to be time for kaplane to do it because of the plus buy on Festival and Druid. But it seemed like he didn't convert his villagers into villages quickly enough. Whether that was because he misplayed it or because it wasn't possible to do, I'm not sure. Bryan did start greening pretty aggressively, which I think was the correct thing to do from his position. Alright, so now we've got kaplane with the opportunity to open Trading Post or Old Witch or Cultist, which is quite the bevy of options. I do agree with the comments that a Trading Post probably the best option. You know, in general, that trashing is going to be able to not completely shut down those attacks, but you know, mitigate them strongly enough that they're not as big of a threat. And then you combine that with the fact that Trading Post before your opponent even gets those attacks going is also thinning. It's just seems really strong. This also... Well, wait a minute. There is Acting Troop. Can you get enough villagers with Acting Troop that you can plausibly do non-terminal draw stuff? I don't know. I tend to think that's pretty awkward. Like, Cultist, if you go for Cultists, then it's going to be hard to play your Acting Troops because you're going to terminally draw them by chaining your Cultists. If you go for Old Witch, that's less likely to happen, so maybe it's a little bit more feasible, but I could easily see the players ignoring both of those cards in favor of just going for like treasure trove, just having tons of money in the deck. Aqueduct will also to some extent reward early greening. In conjunction with a money-based strategy. Okay, so kaplane grabs a Cultist. This will be interesting, because kaplane is now pretty likely to whiff his, or like, you know, terminally collide his Trading Post. He doesn't have an Acting Troop either. Meanwhile, Bryan did pick up a province and take the Aqueduct points, which is pretty nice. So some of the people in the chat are saying that Plot and Acting Troop seem cultist friendly. I really don't agree with respect to acting troop. Like you got to get an acting troop down before you go in for cultist for that to like work. Otherwise, you're just so likely to terminally draw the acting troops that you just never get the opportunity to play them and pick up the villagers. If you have the villagers already, then you can get more acting troops down as you buy them. Though it's also worth noting that right now nobody has plus buy, which makes buying acting troops a little awkward anyway. So Bryan grabs a duchy just to drain the rest of the silver aqueduct points. I don't think that's crazy. Meanwhile, he's got all the ruins. Um, and now Kaplane grabs a province. Yeah, they're calling for Kaplane to buy acting troop, but yeah, I agree with soccer is fun. Like, when is he gonna play acting troop? I just don't see that happening. I think um, capital would have been interesting as a source of plus buy that doesn't cost an action. Like trade route and candlestick maker have that problem. So it'll be interesting to see how much the ruins damage Bryan. Things will be no worse for him than they are now, and he's just silver flooding, which makes sense. I I don't know whether it's going to make sense for him to bother to pick up a treasure trove or whether he's just going to grab duchies. I mean, the only reason he grabbed the duchy when he did was to grab the aqueduct points, not because he particularly needed duchies. Oh, right, he's got the plot. That helps a lot. So now he can province. And this puts Kaplane in a somewhat awkward position. Although, when Bryan doesn't have the plot on the line, Kaplane can probably assume that he's not going to be provincing. Well, Kaplane can't buy a province anyway. So, does he just buy duchy here? No, he buys capital. Okay, I can see that. You hope you just chain all your cultists, draw all your cards, get your capital, buy 2 provinces. Although even that is not enough to win the game if Bryan adds a duchy here. So, still a pretty awkward position overall for Kaplane. So I guess here you double duchy and take no debt as Kaplane? Yeah. He had to burn his plot to do it, which is pretty unfortunate. So I think here for Bryan, you probably don't use the plot yet. You probably wait. Although he can't buy a duchy, which is awkward. He would really like to have a duchy. But, yeah, buy a silver. Well, I guess he could. Does the math make sense for him to buy an estate? He's up 8 points. If he grabs an estate, then he ties a duchy province. So, yeah. Ooh. That's an ugly hand for Bryan. And of course, that is going to happen. So 6-point lead. It does make sense mathematically for him to pick up another estate here. 2 cards is probably not enough. Yeah, he doesn't take it. I was gonna say 2 cards is probably not enough to push him up, possibly even to duchy territory, let alone province. So. Interesting. So Kaplane just trashed 2 cultists with trading posts for +6 cards, and also popped his sinister plot, and he still was not able to hit double province with the capital. That's that is not ideal. Cavo Sapien says that's cap shot. I don't think that's quite fair because Bryan's deck is still quite bad. Oh. Wait. What did he have in hand there? Could he not have trading? Oh, I guess he only had 5 anyway. So he couldn't have hit province. Alright. So Bryan is able to province. Duchies are gone. Kaplane. What do you do? I mean, buy a cultist. Like you're emptying piles that you don't want to be emptying, but I guess he. I mean, what is even Kaplane's win condition though? I think. Oh, he gets an old witch. That makes sense. Okay. Yeah, you get an old witch. You give out some curses. If you're Bryan, I guess you can respond in kind. There's not really much reason not to. So I think Bryan will take the plot this time. Well, yeah, of course he will, because it guarantees him a province. Plot is definitely not the best project, but but it definitely put in work for Bryan there. I don't know if it's fair to say that his ignoring cultist was only viable because of it, but it certainly helped. But I mean, I think a lot of the people in the comments were underestimating the disadvantage of like the downsides of like the cultist approach. Like you spend a lot of buys on cultists and then you end up sort of painting yourself into a corner where you don't have the flexibility to transition into a deck that uses other actions. Whereas Bryan added a bunch of money, so he had so he had payload, and then he was able to green a little earlier. Alright, so what do we got here? We got tax again. Always a good time for first player. So he just takes the debt on priest. I assume he'll just buy tax here. Meanwhile, Kaplane. What do you do here as Kaplane? You want to buy those, buy a 4. I mean, specifically you want to buy a priest, but if you buy a seller, sure. And I guess that's fine. Like it makes it more likely that you can find your priest. So maybe now Bryan grabs a seller too instead of taxing. Yeah. There you go. Bryan seller already set up to do some work. So yeah, okay. Gets another priest, more trashing. Trashing good. Okay, so kaplane grabs a laboratory. Can't go wrong with laboratories. Sammy says I'd have tax priest as Bryan. But didn't Bryan not have the opportunity to do that until after? Oh no, he did. Okay, yeah, actually that probably would have been better. Although the seller did do work, so. Yeah, the problem with buying tax, and I've expressed this in games where I've played with tax, is just that, like, so often it's just going to come back to bite you anyway. Like, it's really hard. I mean, it does come up, but there's a lot more times when you have the opportunity to buy tax or have nothing better to buy than tax, and yet there's no card that clearly your opponent wants that you don't care about, versus the number of times that um, there is like a clear card to tax. Sam E asks what 2 type you get for Courtier, because you're not going to bother with familiar. I mean, I guess it's got to be mill, right? Mills are also good with Ironmonger. Just get Canal. Well, I mean, there is plus buy on the board, so Canal is definitely nice to have. There's not really any other significant interactions. Nothing that's targeting cost points, but yeah, I definitely would have liked that ahead of Blessed Village. Does Kaplane even have multiple terminals? He doesn't. Yeah, I don't really follow that purchase. If you weren't going to get Canal, I think there's other things you might have wanted. You might have wanted to get a Courtier, or another lab. All right. Well, he's got the option again. Okay, this time he picks up the Courtier. That's fine. Courtier in front of Canal versus Courtier after Canal doesn't make a huge difference. The advantage of getting the Canal first is, you don't put the stop card into your deck yet, but Courtier means that, hey, if you have enough to buy 2 things anyway, like, without the Canal discount, then you can go ahead and do that, and so you're moving or building your deck faster. Okay, so that's a pretty sad Courtier, but I guess it's fine. Well, actually, the plus buy isn't really doing much here. Yeah, you go for the +3 and take Canal. Yeah, that's fine. It's good. I mean, that's the right choice. It's just a sad. The Courtier, I guess the Courtier didn't have anything to hit that was going to give it a double type anyway. But you would have liked to Hex Kaplan. You would have liked to hit it on a turn where you drew more of your deck and had a bigger payload for the turn. So that was not a great seller for kaplane. Oh, Blessed Village is a dual type too. That's right. Okay. I forgot about that. Well, whatever. I think I'd rather have the. I mean, well, you're gonna need. Yeah, no, I'd rather just have the mills. Mill Ironmonger is really nice, and mills are also worth points, which is about as good or maybe better slightly than the boons that you're gonna get in general. So Bryan continues to gain laboratories. Well, he did also gain a gold. The chat's saying that they'd like to see him get a canal. You know, I think that'd be good. Or also pick up, you know, a mill or some other thing to activate the courtier. Also be nice. Nobody picking up those mills. I am surprised by that. Like Ironmonger Mill just seems like a really nice buy. Okay, so Bryan gets the canal. Just based on what he's been doing so far, I'm guessing he's just going to pick up another lab. And picks up another courtier. Okay. Not having an activator for the courtier. I mean, you get almost as much mileage out of just getting something to activate with your first courtier as you do having another one. I mean, unless you really just want to play it for like as a ruin market, but it's pretty weak. Oh, well, there is the Blessed Village, and I guess if you get your sequencing right, you can do that. I think they do each have a Blessed Village. Discards 2 coppers. Why not 3 coppers? I guess he wanted to make sure he had one to trash with Priest. Eh. Oh, maybe Kaplane does have both of the Blessed Villages. Yeah, I really... That makes the double courtier even worse. One of these courtiers right now is effectively ruined village. Or unless he doesn't play as priest. Oh. Plus buy. That's definitely the boon you want to get. Oh, maybe there's another better one, but it's up there. Dang it, game. Show me the new ones. Don't just keep the same one open forever. A mint that doesn't require gold. That actually makes it sound good. Whereas all the other comparisons make it sound bad. Like Leprechaun only costs 3. Bandit attacks. Yeah, how did Kaplane end up with 7 labs? I thought Bryan was the one who kept buying them. I guess he stopped. Province Courtier? I'd rather do Province. Oh, well, he can't do Province. Oh, yeah, he can. He's got the canal discount. I'd rather do Province Mill than Province Courtier. Pick up the second Courtier after you've got the. Well, he does have the 2 Blessed Villages. Yeah, okay, fine, never mind. It's Bryan that needs to pick up a mill. Or a Blessed Village, I suppose. But mill's worth points! I don't know. I'm surprised that. I mean, I guess labs. Labs are always draw. Ironmongers are only draw if they actually hit the mill. But Ironmongers are also villages, which means you can play the Courtier without plus action, potentially. Play your priest. And mills are also worth points. Mills help you with the Courtiers. I'm just surprised that there hasn't been more interest in that particular combination of cards. Ironmonger can also cycle you out, cycle those coppers out of the way, given how long it takes the priest to trash them. Okay, so province for sure. That leaves him with enough for, yeah, 2 4 costs. Picks up a Blessed Village, which makes sense. Another Blessed Village. Yeah, I guess that's fine. I mean, given that he has 2 courtiers, spamming the Blessed Villages, so he doesn't have to take the mill debt. I mean, it'd still be nice to have the tiebreaker points. And also the mills, if you have enough draw, which I don't know that either of them do, but well, actually I think Kaplane does have enough draw to support like mill discard and then redraw those cards and thus increasing the payload. Sammy is right. Kaplane had played 7 labs last turn, so he's played 6. Top card is lab. If he knows that, which he should, then he should not have just played that Courtier. Oh, well, I mean, maybe he doesn't want to draw. Oh, no, okay. Why did he need that action anyway? I'm pretty sure the answer is no. Pretty sure. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that kaplane could have just picked up a free Ironmonger or Blessed Village. Oh, he needed to reveal Blessed Village though. That was the problem. Okay. Yeah. Alright, well, this looks to be solidly in hand for kaplane. He's up a province. He should be able to double here, I think, if I'm counting this correctly. 12, 13, 14, 15, and then the other courtier for the rest of the coins. Not to, oh, and the priest bumps it to 16, actually. Or not. Okay, well, yeah. There you have it. Alright, definitely getting tired towards the end of this, so my commentary may not have been the best, but hopefully it wasn't terrible. Hopefully you enjoyed this match. I certainly enjoyed the Rogue Forge shenanigans. Good play overall by both players, I think. I mean, there were criticisms throughout, as there always are, but aside from, what was it, game 3, or maybe it was game 1. No, it was game 2. So Bryan ended up winning the game anyway. But aside from the way that he ended that game and the fact that he almost lost a game that he should have won earlier as a result of missing a pilot, I didn't notice any like egregious mistakes. I don't think. There's always things that you can improve on, but I think both players played quite well. Anyway, that'll do it for now. I'll catch you later for some more Dominion. Till then.